Sophia Turner smoothed the crease on her conference badge, a small, almost unconscious gesture. Everything in her life had a place, a label, a meticulously planned trajectory. At 26, she was an archival conservator, a guardian of history, a mender of fragile paper. Her world was measured in microns, pH levels, and the quiet dignity of preserved truth. Las Vegas, with its screaming neon and relentless jingle of slot machines, was the antithesis of everything she held dear. It felt like a grand, chaotic shredder, threatening to consume any sense of order she possessed, much like her looming student debt threatened to consume her modest salary. She was here for a panel on digital preservation, a necessary evil in a field that still revered the tactile. Each night, she retreated from the assault of flashing lights and boisterous crowds to her hotel room, a quiet sanctuary where she could pore over her notes, her neatly typed agenda, a bulwark against the city's impulsive energy. She believed in doing the ethical thing, always, in every situation, even when surrounded by 1,000 temptations promising quick, glittering shortcuts. The thought of anything less was an itch beneath her skin, a violation of her very nature. Today, after her session, she'd decided to escape the main conference hall. The sheer volume of people, the cloying scent of stale cigar smoke and cheap perfume had become unbearable. She needed air, or at least a different kind of manufactured environment. Her research pointed her towards the Neon Museum, but first, a quick detour. She'd heard about a charming, if slightly anachronistic chapel tucked away in one of the older, less flashy casinos. A moment of quiet, perhaps, before she plunged into the history of discarded signs. Meanwhile, a different kind of storm was brewing across town. In a chapel far more opulent, lined with plush velvet, and smelling faintly of lilies and desperation. Vincent DeSantis, 39, stood before a bewildered officiant, his jaw tight, eyes burning with a cold fury that promised swift retribution. He was a casino investor, yes, but more than that, a strategist for his family, a silent architect of their empire. His world was high stakes, ruthless, yet governed by a rigid, if dark, personal code. No trafficking, no harm to workers or tourists. Lines were drawn, even in the shadows. A deal had gone south, a betrayal exposed, and the consequences were closing in. He felt the net tightening. Arrivals. Calculated move to destabilize his operations. He needed an out, a shield, a distraction. His frustration, usually a controlled burn, flared into a reckless inferno. He slammed a fist lightly on the velvet-draped altar, the sound swallowed by the thick fabric. "Enough," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "I'll marry the next woman who walks in here." The officiant swallowed hard, adjusting his bow tie. He'd seen desperate acts in this chapel, but never one quite so decisive. Sophia, oblivious to the storm she was about to walk into, paused outside a gift shop near the quieter chapel she was seeking. Her eyes scanned a display of vintage slot tokens, their brass glinting under the fluorescent lights. One, a particularly charming relic from a long-defunct casino, caught her eye. She bought it, not as a souvenir, but as a small piece of history, something tangible and real in a city built on illusion. She carefully slipped it into a small, acid-free envelope she kept in her bag for such accidental acquisitions. It would be documented, categorized, perhaps even a teaching tool, a tiny, perfect piece of order in the sprawling chaos. She continued down the hallway, her sensible heels clicking softly on the polished marble, heading towards the door marked Chapel of Eternal Vows. She pushed it open. The door swung inward with a soft whisper of hinges, revealing not the quiet sanctuary Sophia had imagined, but a scene frozen in tense anticipation. Plush velvet lined the walls, soaking up sound, but it couldn't absorb the raw energy that crackled in the air. A small, nervous officiant stood before an altar, his eyes wide. And then there was him, Vincent DeSantis. His dark suit was impeccable, his posture rigid, but his gaze, when it snapped to Sophia, was anything but calm. It was a predator's stare, sharp and assessing, yet laced with a surprise that mirrored her own. Her breath caught. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking through her, as if she were an answer to a question he'd just violently posed to the universe. The silence that had felt profound a moment ago now stretched, suffocating. Sophia's sensible heels suddenly felt too loud on the marble floor. Her mind, usually a well-ordered filing cabinet, whirred, searching for context, for an explanation. This wasn't the quaint, quiet chapel from the online reviews. This was something else, something dangerous. "She's the one," Vincent's voice rumbled, low and absolute, cutting through the heavy air. Not a question, a statement. He took a step forward and Sophia instinctively recoiled. Her student debt, her ethical compass, her meticulous life plan, all of it felt irrelevant, dissolving into the absurdity of the moment. The officiant, clearly terrified, fumbled with a small book. "Very well," he stammered, his eyes darting between Vincent's unyielding face and Sophia's bewildered one. "If you're both ready." Ready? Sophia wanted to scream. Ready for what? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. It was like a nightmare where she was trying to shout, but her voice was gone. Her pulse hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the velvet silence. This was chaos, pure and unadulterated, the very thing her soul rebelled against. The ceremony was a blur, a surreal, horrifying farce. Words were spoken, questions asked, but they were distant, muffled. "Do you, Vincent DeSantis, take this woman? Do you, Sophia Turner, take this man?" Sophia felt like a puppet, her body moving without her consent. She managed a strangled, almost inaudible, I do?" It was a question, not a vow, ripped from her by the sheer force of Vincent's presence, the weight of the officiant's panicked gaze, the suffocating atmosphere. She couldn't process it. Her mind refused to accept the reality of it. A flash popped, blinding her for a second. When her vision cleared, a small, square Polaroid was being shaken gently by the officiant, an instant artifact of an impossible event. It showed a startled Sophia, eyes wide with terror, next to a grim-faced Vincent, his jaw still tight with resolve. A wedding picture. Her stomach churned. Then came the white chapel wrist corsage, a delicate spray of lilies, stark against the dark fabric of her sensible blazer. The officiant fumbled it onto her wrist, his hands shaking slightly. It felt like a handcuff, a bizarre, beautiful symbol of her sudden, unwanted bond. The scent of the lilies, cloying and sweet, made her want to tear it off, to rip free from this unfolding nightmare. Vincent finally turned to her, his expression unreadable, a flicker of something she couldn't name in his dark eyes. He reached out, not to touch her, but to retrieve the Polaroid from the officiant's trembling hand. "What is happening?" Sophia finally managed, her voice a raw whisper, barely recognizable as her own. She stared at him, her precise, ethical mind fighting against the absurd reality of the last 5 minutes. "Who are you? What have you done?" Vincent simply looked at the Polaroid, then back at her, his gaze intense, assessing, as if seeing her for the first time, truly seeing the archivist, the woman of order, trapped in his impulsive chaos. A muscle ticked in his jaw. He had made his move, won his game, but even he, in that moment, seemed to sense the unexpected gravity of the pawn he had just claimed. Sophia tore the white chapel wrist corsage from her blazer, the delicate lilies scattering like broken promises across the polished marble floor. Her chest heaved, adrenaline pumping a bitter taste into her mouth. "What is happening?" she repeated, her voice rising, no longer a whisper, but a furious demand. She faced Vincent, her eyes blazing, refusing to be intimidated by his silent, predatory presence. "You answer me right now, or I swear to God—" He cut her off, his voice low, a controlled rumble that vibrated in the air between them. "Not here." He gripped her arm, not gently, his fingers strong and unyielding. Sophia gasped, a protest forming, but he was already pulling her, his stride long, purposeful. She stumbled, forced to keep pace, her sensible shoes clicking a frantic rhythm against the marble as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors. She felt like a package being delivered, her outrage simmering, threatening to boil over. He led her through a service entrance, past bewildered staff, into a private elevator that whisked them upwards, the silence thick and oppressive. When the doors finally parted, they opened onto a sprawling high-roller suite, all muted tones, expensive art, and a panoramic view of the Vegas Strip that glittered like a million shattered dreams. He released her arm, stepping away, but his gaze never left her. "Now!" Sophia spat, crossing her arms, her body rigid. "Explain, every single word. What was that? Who are you?" Vincent walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to her for a moment, then turned, his expression unreadable. "My name is Vincent DeSantis. The ceremony you just endured was an impulse." He paused, then added, his voice devoid of apology, "A necessary one." Sophia felt a cold dread settle in her stomach, even as her anger flared hotter. "Necessary for whom?" "I'm an archivist, Mr. DeSantis. I'm here for a conference. I have a life, a real life. You don't just impulsively marry people." He watched her, a faint flicker of something, amusement, curiosity, in his dark eyes. "My rival, an ambitious man named Lombardi, has been trying to destabilize my operations. He's been preparing a subpoena. He plans to hit me where it hurts, through my finances, my holdings." He took a step closer, his voice dropping, becoming more dangerous. "He intends to use spousal access to my records, to bypass legal barriers through a wife." Sophia stared, her mind struggling to process the sheer audacity, the cold calculation. "Spousal access? You married me to avoid a subpoena?" The words felt obscene, a violation of everything she held sacred. Her meticulous ethical world was crumbling around her, replaced by this grotesque, dangerous spectacle. "You used me as a shield." Her voice was raw with fury, each word a hammer blow. "I refuse. I absolutely refuse to be used as a prop in your dangerous little game. My integrity, my name, my entire career, it all depends on me being beyond reproach. I won't be a pawn in your Mafia war, whatever this is. I won't be used." She felt a fierce, unyielding resolve solidify within her, a bedrock against his power. Her goal to avoid scandal was shattered, yes, but she would not allow herself to be further compromised. Vincent's gaze sharpened, a new intensity entering his eyes. He was accustomed to control, to people bending to his will, but Sophia, standing there trembling with rage and defiance, was not bending. Her stubborn refusal, her unyielding integrity, met his calculated ruthlessness head-on. The air between them crackled, not just with anger, but with something else, something unexpected, a spark, a recognition of an equally formidable will hidden beneath the archivist's precise exterior. The danger in the room, instead of driving her away, seemed to highlight the raw, magnetic pull that now existed between their clashing worlds. Sophia's fury was a raw, burning thing, consuming the air in the opulent suite. "Used as a shield. Do you have any idea what you've just done to my life?" Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer, unadulterated outrage that coursed through her veins. Her carefully constructed world, built on precision and ethical boundaries, felt as if it had been hit by a wrecking ball. Vincent watched her, unmoving, his gaze like steel. "I understand the inconvenience. However, the alternative for me was far worse. For you," he continued, taking another slow step towards her, his voice a low, persuasive hum, "there are compensations." Sophia scoffed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "Compensations? You think money fixes this? You think you can buy my complicity?" "I can assure your safety," he stated, ignoring her interruption. "My people are already on it. Lombardy's reach won't extend to you. You'll be protected discreetly for as long as necessary, and your student debt," he added, a subtle shift in his tone, a calculated offer, "that burden can be entirely lifted. Consider it a wedding gift, a severance package for your inconvenience." The mention of her student debt hit Sophia like a physical blow. The crushing weight of it, the endless calculations of how many years it would take to escape, had been a constant hum beneath her daily life. For a fleeting, shameful second, a sliver of temptation pricked her. Freedom from that financial chokehold. It was a fantasy she'd never allowed herself to truly entertain. But the thought vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a colder, harder resolve. "No," she said, the single word sharp, cutting through the lavish silence. "Absolutely not. My freedom isn't for sale, Mr. DeSantis. My integrity isn't a commodity you can purchase to clean up your messes." She saw the entanglement clear as day, a gilded cage perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. She would lose herself, her agency, becoming nothing more than an extension of his dangerous world. Her allergic to chaos nature screamed in protest. Vincent's dark brows furrowed slightly, a flicker of something akin to surprise in his eyes. He was accustomed to offers being accepted, to problems being solved with resources. He hadn't expected such an unyielding will. "This isn't a negotiation, Sophia. It's a reality. You are my wife, legally, for now, and that makes you a target." "Then fix it legally," she shot back, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Don't drag me into your shadows. I refuse to be a prop, a shield. I refuse to pretend this farce is real." Her eyes fell, for a fraction of a second, to her wrist, where the memory of the white chapel. Wrist corsage still lingered, even though she'd ripped it off. It lay somewhere on the polished marble of the chapel floor, a symbol of a bond she utterly rejected. The thought of wearing it, of acknowledging it, made her stomach churn. He stepped closer still, invading her personal space, and despite her anger, a shiver traced down her spine. Not fear, not entirely. It was the sheer, potent force of him, a magnetic pull that she fought with every fiber of her being. "My methods might not align with your ethical framework, archivist, but they are effective. I don't believe in half measures. And I don't believe in unethical shortcuts," she retorted, lifting her chin, meeting his intense gaze. "Your code, no trafficking, no harm to workers or tourists. It sounds good on paper, but you just forced a woman into a marriage she didn't consent to. How does that fit your code, Mr. DeSantis? How does that make you any better than the rival you're fighting?" His jaw tightened, a muscle ticking at his temple. Her words, sharp and direct, clearly struck a nerve. He expected fear, perhaps even tears, but not this articulate, furious challenge to his very principles. He studied her, a new respect dawning in his eyes, a grudging acknowledgement of her fierce intelligence. She wasn't just a pawn, she was a force. The air thrummed between them, thick with resentment, yes, but also with an undeniable, dangerous spark, a flicker of something unexpected that pulled at the edges of her tightly controlled world. Sophia felt it too, a perverse awareness of him, even as every fibre of her being screamed in protest against the chaos he represented. This wasn't just about the subpoena anymore. It was about their clashing wills, and the strange electric current that now connected them. Sophia's fury had sharpened into something cold and crystalline. She wasn't just angry. She was calculating, her archivist's mind, accustomed to dissecting facts and verifying authenticity, now focused on the impossible situation she'd been thrust into. "You don't get to decide my reality, Mr. DeSantis," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I am not a pawn in your game. I am not a bargaining chip. And I am certainly not your shield." She stepped back, creating a sliver of space between them, reclaiming her personal boundary. "Your rival wants to use spousal access to your ledgers. Fine. Then don't give him spousal access. Don't hide behind me. Fight him. Illegally. Expose his scheme, whatever it is. You want to uphold your code." She gestured around the opulent, sterile suite. "Then do it with integrity, not by trapping an innocent woman in a sham marriage." Vincent's expression remained unreadable, but Sophia saw the almost imperceptible tightening around his eyes, a subtle shift in his formidable posture. He was cornered, not by her physical presence, but by her unwavering ethical stance. He wasn't used to this. He was used to power, to threats, to people complying. Her refusal, her insistence on a right way, was a foreign language to him. "You believe it's that simple?" he finally said, his voice low, a hint of steel beneath the calm. "Lombardi operates in the shadows. His ledgers are designed to look legitimate. To expose them legally would require a certain finesse, a certain leverage." "Then find it," Sophia shot back, her voice gaining strength. Her revulsion for his quick, dangerous fixes was absolute. "Your methods are chaos. My world is order. I deal in verifiable facts, in paper trails that tell the truth. If his ledgers are fraudulent, there will be evidence. There's always a flaw, a trace, something that doesn't quite add up. That's what I do. I find the truth hidden in the details." She watched him, her breath catching as a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher crossed his face. Not just surprise, but perhaps a nascent understanding. He was seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. Not as a convenient solution, but as an unexpected force. His instinct was to protect, to dominate, but her fierce independence and ethical clarity were challenging every one of his usual methods. He was beginning to see the strength in her weakness, the power in her unwavering commitment to truth. "You're talking about documents," he said, his voice slow, as if testing the words. "I'm talking about facts," Sophia corrected, her chin high. "About verifiable proof, about finding the truth in the paper, not in a forced marriage. You have resources, Mr. DeSantis. Use them for something real. Find the flaw. Expose him for what he is, legitimately, because I won't be a part of anything less." The tension in the suite was palpable, thick with unspoken challenges and burgeoning respect. Sophia knew she was pushing him, pushing against a lifetime of ingrained habits and a dangerous world he commanded, but she wouldn't back down. Not now, not ever. Her integrity was the one thing she wouldn't compromise, even if it meant standing alone against a Mafia boss in a high-roller suite, demanding justice on her own terms. The thought of those rival ledgers, of the potential for hidden truths within their pages, sparked a different kind of fire in her, a professional curiosity that momentarily eclipsed her fear. She was an archivist. She understood paper. She understood deceit hidden in plain sight. And she understood that a paper trail, properly followed, could lead to more truth than any impulsive vow. The opulent suite, with its panoramic views and hushed luxury, had become Sophia's gilded cage. She woke to the sterile silence, the memory of Vincent's words from the night before echoing like a death knell. You are my wife, legally, for now, and that makes you a target. The absurdity of it still made her stomach clench. An archivist, a conservator of fragile truths, suddenly entangled in a Mafia war. She found Vincent already awake, standing by the window, a phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, clipped, the terse Italian phrases a sharp contrast to the soft dawn light filtering into the room. She didn't understand the words, but the tension in his posture, the tight line of his jaw, spoke volumes. He looked like a man under immense pressure, a predator caught in his own trap. Her anger, which had simmered all night, flared again. This was his trap, and she was caught in it. He ended the call, turning slowly to face her. His dark eyes, usually so unreadable, held a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher, weariness, regret. Lombardi made his move, he stated, his voice flat. He's petitioned the court. The subpoena is official, and he's cited our recent union. Sophia felt a cold wave wash over her. Cited it? What does that mean? It means he intends to use the marital privilege, Vincent explained, walking towards the large, polished table in the center of the room. He picked up a tablet, his fingers scrolling with practiced ease. He believes that as my wife, you would be compelled to testify, to provide access to certain accounts, certain records he claims are held under my personal name, not the company's. Records he suspects contain irregularities. Irregularities? Sophia scoffed. You mean fraud? He's fabricating evidence, and he thinks he can force me to corroborate it? The violation of it stung, sharp and immediate. Spousal access. The phrase felt like a brand, a claim on her privacy, her very identity. It was a grotesque perversion of the sacred. Her meticulous notes, her research, her personal finances, all of it felt exposed, vulnerable to this man's ruthless machinations. The thought of being legally bound to reveal details of Vincent's world, to be an unwilling conduit for his rival, was abhorrent. Her integrity, the bedrock of her professional life, was under attack. Vincent's gaze hardened. He's a man who leaves few loose ends, but he's desperate. He thinks this marriage is a weakness, a way to pressure me through you. He thinks you're a leverage point. He paused, his eyes meeting hers, a silent, almost imperceptible apology in their depths. He thinks you're a shield I put in front of myself. A ripple of unease, cold and unwelcome, ran down Sophia's spine, not just at Lombardi's threat, but at the stark confirmation of her own fears. Vincent had used her. Even if he now regretted it, the initial impulse had been to make her a barrier. She watched him, seeing the strain around his eyes, the way he rubbed the back of his neck. He was visibly stressed, the weight of his impetuous decision clearly pressing down on him. His code, never use a woman as a shield, was being tested, not by some external force, but by his own rash act. The irony was bitter. Later that morning, as she tried to make sense of the chaos, a news channel on the suite's massive television flashed a headline about a major casino investor facing unprecedented legal scrutiny. A blurred photo of Vincent, caught by a paparazzi, flashed across the screen. The accompanying article hinted at whispers of a sudden, unexpected marriage and the potential implications for his business dealings. It didn't mention her name, but the implication was clear. Her sudden, unwanted bond was already part of the public narrative, a scandal unfolding in real time. She felt the increased security, a palpable presence just beyond the suite door, in the elevator banks. Vincent's people were everywhere, silent, watchful, their very presence a constant reminder of the danger that now clung to her. She was safe, yes, but isolated, trapped. The high-roller suite was a fortress, but she was its most unwilling prisoner. The threat of spousal access hung over her like a dark cloud, a constant suffocating reminder of how deeply her privacy, her integrity, had been violated. She was no longer just an archivist. She was a pawn, a potential witness, a target. And the knowledge burned. The high roller suite, once a symbol of suffocating luxury, now felt like a battlefield. Sophia paced, the plush carpet doing little to absorb the frantic energy thrumming through her. Vincent watched her from the window, his back still a rigid line, his silence more unnerving than any threat. The news of the subpoena, the explicit mention of their union, had solidified her terror into a cold, hard knot in her stomach. "So, this is your world," she said, her voice tight, cutting through the silence. "This is how you operate. You drag innocent people into your conflicts, then call it necessary." He turned, his dark eyes meeting hers, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. "My world is complex, Sophia. It has rules, even if they are not the ones you are accustomed to." He moved, picking up a heavy crystal decanter, then setting it back down without pouring. "You questioned my code. You said I trapped you. You're right. My actions were impulsive, born of desperation. But the intent was not to harm you. It was to protect what is mine, and more importantly, to protect those under my responsibility." He took a step closer, his voice low, intense. "I told you, my code is rigid. No trafficking, no harm to workers or tourists. Those are lines I don't cross, ever. My businesses provide livelihoods. They bring stability to families. Lombardi's methods, however, threaten all of that. He deals in extortion, in manipulation, in deliberate ruin. He doesn't have a code. He has avarice." Sophia stared, her mind racing. He was trying to justify himself, to paint himself as a lesser evil. But the words rang hollow in her ears, tainted by her own predicament. "So, because Lombardi is worse, that makes your actions acceptable. You still used me, Vincent. You still bound me to you without my consent. How does that square with no harm?" Her voice rose, indignation burning through her. "How can you claim to protect people when you treat me like a commodity, a legal loophole?" He paused, a muscle ticking in his jaw. Her direct challenge, her refusal to be placated, seemed to both frustrate and intrigue him. He met her gaze head-on. "My family built this. My responsibility is to ensure it stands. Lombardi's attack isn't just on me, it's on everything we've established. His ledgers, the ones he wants to subpoena through you, are fabricated, full of false entries, designed to make it look like I'm skimming, laundering, operating outside the law." Sophia felt a jolt. Fabricated ledgers. Her archivist's mind, usually so resistant to chaos, suddenly found a pinprick of focus within the swirling storm. This wasn't just about a forced marriage, it was about a deeper deception. The marriage was merely the key Lombardi hoped to use to unlock Vincent's records, to expose his own lies by framing Vincent. "He's using forged documents to set me up," Vincent continued, his voice devoid of emotion, but his eyes burning with a cold fury. "And he believes that with you as my wife, with spousal access, he can force those fraudulent accounts into the public record, implicating me by association, by the very act of you being compelled to testify to their discovery in my files." The true depth of the danger, and the rival's insidious plot, settled over Sophia like a shroud. It wasn't just a simple subpoena, it was a sophisticated legal trap, designed to weaponize their impulsive union against Vincent, with her as the unwilling instrument. The marriage wasn't just a shield, it was an enabler for Lombardi's carefully constructed lie. Her integrity, her very name, was now tied to proving Vincent's innocence or accepting his guilt by proxy. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through her, but beneath it a tiny, defiant spark ignited. Forged ledgers. This was her territory, her world of paper trails and hidden truths. Sophia felt the walls of the high-roller suite closing in, the polished surfaces reflecting her own frantic energy back at her. The truth of Lombardi's scheme, the fabricated ledgers, the insidious plan to use her. It was too much. Her precise, orderly mind, usually so adept at categorizing chaos, was splintering under the weight of it all. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She just needed to escape, even if only for a few hours. "I need to go out," she announced, spinning to face Vincent, who was still by the window, a silent, formidable statue. He turned, his expression unreadable. "That's not advisable right now. Sophia, Lombardi's people are undoubtedly watching." "I don't care," she retorted, her voice raw. "I feel like I'm suffocating. I need air. I need to think, away from all of this." She swept her hand around the luxurious prison. "I'll be discreet. Just a drive. I saw signs for the desert for nothing. I need nothing right now." Vincent studied her, his gaze intense, then gave a curt nod. "Fine. But you won't be alone. My driver Marco will take you. You will go where he takes you. No detours, no contact." It wasn't a question, it was an order, softened only by the flicker of concern she thought she saw in his eyes. Minutes later, Sophia was in the back of a sleek black SUV, the silence inside a stark contrast to the thrumming tension of the suite. Outside, the Las Vegas sky had turned a bruised purple, heavy with an impending storm. The first fat drops splattered against the windshield as they left the gleaming strip, heading into the desolate expanse of the desert. The landscape quickly transformed, the neon replaced by scrub brush and the skeletal outlines of distant mountains. The rain began in earnest, a furious downpour, blurring the world into streaks of grey and green. Monsoon season. It felt fitting, a chaotic, natural echo of the storm raging inside her. She stared out at the deluge, her mind a whirlwind. Vincent had claimed a code, a set of boundaries he wouldn't cross. No trafficking, no harm to workers or tourists. But he had harmed her. He had compromised her integrity, her very identity, all to protect his empire. Was he truly any better than Lombardi, or just a different shade of darkness? He was grappling with his choices, she knew. She saw the strain, the silent battles in his eyes. But his world was still so alien, so brutal. The driver, Marco, a man whose silence was as unsettling as Vincent's, pulled the car onto a deserted stretch of road, parking beneath the meager shelter of an overpass. The rain hammered on the roof, a deafening rhythm. Sophia closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her, trying to clear the static from her mind. Fabricated ledgers. The phrase from Vincent kept circling back, a tiny beacon in the storm. Lombardi was setting him up with forged documents. Her archival training, her life's work, was about discerning truth from deception in paper, about identifying anomalies, tracing origins, understanding the very composition of a document. If Lombardi's ledgers were fraudulent, there would be a flaw. There had to be. Paper couldn't lie perfectly. Ink couldn't lie perfectly. She thought of the acid-free gloves she always carried, the meticulous process of examining a document under magnification. What kind of fraud would Lombardi attempt? Crude alterations, or something more sophisticated? She remembered a case study from her university days about a historical ledger where entries had been made with a specific erasable ink designed to disappear under heat or to be altered. Without leaving a trace, invisible ink. The idea, once a purely academic concept, now felt terrifyingly real. Her hands clenched in her lap. She wouldn't be a shield. She wouldn't be a pawn. But if Lombardi's plan hinged on fraudulent accounts, then perhaps her unique skills, her precise ethical approach, weren't useless after all. Perhaps she wasn't just trapped in Vincent's chaos, but held the very key to unraveling it, to exposing the real lie. The ledger with invisible ink, a looming threat, suddenly felt less like a weapon and more like a puzzle she might just be equipped to solve. The thought, cold and defiant, settled deep within her, a small ember of purpose in the monsoon of doubt. Sophia woke with a new clarity, the monsoon rain having washed away some of the suffocating despair. No more cowering, no more being a pawn. If Lombardi's game was about paper, then she was the one best equipped to play. Her archival conservator skills, her meticulous training, her absolute dedication to truth in documentation, this was her battlefield. She found Vincent in the same high-roller suite, on the phone again, a silent sentinel against the glittering Las Vegas skyline. He ended the call, his gaze sharp as it landed on her. "I want to see them," Sophia stated, her voice steady, devoid of the tremor of fear or anger that had defined her interactions with him. "The ledgers. Lombardi's fabricated accounts. I want to see every single document he plans to use against you." Vincent's dark brows rose fractionally, a hint of surprise in his eyes. He hadn't expected this directness, this sudden shift from emotional reaction to professional demand. "You want to examine them?" "I want to find the flaws," she corrected, stepping closer, her resolve radiating outward. "You said he uses forged documents. Paper doesn't lie perfectly, Vincent. There are always tells. Ink composition, paper fibers, binding methods, even the subtle aging process of the materials. I know how to look for them. I know what to look for." He regarded her, a long, assessing look that made a shiver run down her spine. But this time it wasn't purely fear. It was a recognition, a primal awareness of his intensity. "These aren't just old books, Sophia. They're dangerous." "And I'm not just a naive archivist," she countered, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. "I'm trained to preserve truth. If Lombardi's ledgers are fraudulent, I will find the evidence, but I need access, and I need them now." A flicker of something, reluctance perhaps, or a protective instinct, crossed his face, but then it was replaced by a grudging nod. "Very well. It will take time to get them here discreetly. They're currently secured off-site." The wait was agonizing. Sophia paced, her mind already running through potential scenarios, recalling specific methods of forgery, the subtle indicators of alteration. When a heavy, locked briefcase finally arrived, hours later, carried by one of Vincent's silent, watchful men, she felt a surge of professional anticipation that momentarily eclipsed her personal dread. Vincent himself opened the case, revealing a stack of thick, leather-bound ledgers, their pages filled with precise, almost artistic script. They looked utterly legitimate, designed to deceive. Sophia didn't hesitate. From her conference bag, she produced a small, rolled-up kit, an essential part of her professional arsenal. She pulled on a pair of thin, acid-free gloves, the white fabric a stark contrast to the dark leather of the ledgers. Her movements were precise, economical, every gesture honed by years of careful handling of fragile documents. Vincent watched her, leaning against the edge of the large desk, his arms crossed, a silent, formidable presence. He seemed to expect her to merely glance, to offer a layman's opinion. But Sophia wasn't a layman. She gently opened the first ledger, turning the pages with painstaking care. Her eyes, usually so focused on grand historical narratives, now zeroed in on the smallest details. She ignored the content, the numbers, the financial jargon. She was looking at the paper itself, the slight irregularity in the watermark, the faint, almost imperceptible sheen on certain entries, the minute variations in the weight of the ink as if pressure had changed mid-stroke. "This paper," she murmured, more to herself than to Vincent, her gloved finger tracing a faint line near the spine. "It's a good quality, but the fiber direction is slightly off for the stated period. And these bindings—" She gently tested a corner. "Too new, or rather, too perfectly preserved for something supposedly this old. The wear patterns are inconsistent." Vincent remained silent, but Sophia felt his intense gaze on her, a physical weight. She glanced up, meeting his eyes briefly. There was no longer skepticism there, but a dawning recognition. He was seeing the archivist, the precise, intelligent woman, not just the impulsive bride. She moved on. To the ink, pulling a small, handheld magnifying glass from her kit. She focused on a series of entries, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Look here," she said, her voice hushed with discovery. "The ink. It's too uniform in some places, then almost feathered in others, as if it wasn't applied with the same pressure or even at the same time. And this particular shade of black, it's almost too perfect for a natural iron gall ink of that supposed era. There's a synthetic quality to it, a strange luminescence." Her heart began to pound, a thrill of professional satisfaction mixing with the terrifying reality of the situation. She was finding things, small things, subtle things, but things that screamed fraud to her trained eye. She pushed aside the initial ledger, reaching for another, her gloved hands working with quiet urgency. This wasn't just about Vincent's case anymore. It was about exposing a lie, about restoring integrity to a paper trail. And in Vincent's unwavering gaze, she saw not just a powerful man, but a formidable ally, beginning to understand the true power of her quiet, precise world. The trust, so elusive between them, was beginning to solidify, built on the shared purpose of dismantling a deception. Sophia's fingers, encased in acid-free gloves, moved with a frantic urgency across the ledger's page. The subtle inconsistencies she'd noted earlier, the unnatural sheen, the slight variations in ink weight, had coalesced into a chilling suspicion. She leaned closer, her magnifying glass pressed against the paper, her breath held tight in her chest. Then she saw it. A faint, almost invisible residue, like a ghost of an impression, at the edge of a seemingly perfectly written entry. It was too subtle for the naked eye, too fleeting for a casual glance, but to her trained vision it screamed of manipulation. Her heart leaped, a wild, triumphant beat against her ribs. Erasable ink. It had to be. Not just any ink, but the kind designed to be temporary, to be altered or removed with a chemical solvent or even heat, leaving behind only the faintest whisper of what had once been there, ready for a new, fraudulent entry. The entire ledger, so meticulously crafted to appear legitimate, was a lie. She straightened, her eyes blazing with a mixture of professional triumph and cold fury. Vincent, who had been watching her every move with an unnerving intensity, took a step forward. "You found something," he stated, his voice low. A question and an affirmation woven into one. Sophia ripped off her gloves, the fabric a small tear of sound in the silence. She snatched a pen from his desk, her hand shaking slightly with adrenaline, and pointed it at the page. "This isn't just inconsistent, Vincent. This is deliberate. These ledgers are fraudulent, yes, but not in the way you think. Lombardi isn't just forging new documents. He's altering existing ones. He's using erasable ink." Vincent's dark eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint entering them. "Erasable ink? How can you be sure?" "Because I can see the ghost of the previous entries," she explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. "The paper fibers have been disturbed ever so slightly. The original ink, even if removed, leaves a chemical trace, a faint impression that changes how the paper reflects light. It's a trick I've seen in historical forgeries, a way to make changes without raising immediate suspicion. He's making it look like legitimate entries were simply corrected or updated, when in reality they're completely fabricated. A slow, chilling smile spread across Vincent's face, not of amusement, but of grim satisfaction. So, these irregularities he wants to subpoena through you, they're his own damn work. Exactly, Sophia confirmed, a fierce satisfaction of her own rising within her. He wants to use spousal access to your files, not to find existing fraud, but to discover the fraud he himself created and planted there. It's a setup, Vincent. A sophisticated, dirty setup. She paused. Then a new idea, bold and terrifying, sparked in her mind. But there's a way to expose it. That chemical residue from the erased ink. It reacts to ultraviolet light. It glows. If we can get these ledgers under a strong UV lamp, the original, erased entries will become visible. The truth will literally shine through his lies. Vincent stared at her, his expression a mixture of awe and dawning understanding. He had seen her intellect, her precision, but this was a weapon he hadn't known she possessed. UV light, he repeated, testing the words. Where would we find a setup powerful enough for something like this, and publicly enough to make an impact? Sophia's mind raced, connecting disparate pieces of her chaotic Las Vegas experience. The Neon Museum, she said, the words a sudden, startling revelation. It's filled with old, glowing signs. They have powerful UV lighting to preserve and display the vintage neon. It's after hours. Quiet. We could stage it there. Amidst all those old glowing signs, the truth in his ledgers would be undeniable. It would be the perfect, ironic cover. The tension in the suite shifted. No longer a battle of wills, but a convergence of purpose. Vincent looked at her, truly looked at her, and Sophia saw the raw respect in his eyes. He wasn't just observing her, he was seeing her as an equal, a formidable strategist in her own right. The archivist, the woman who meticulously preserved paper trails, had just found the key to unraveling his enemy's meticulously crafted deception. The Neon Museum, Vincent murmured again, a dangerous thrill in his voice. He walked to the window, gazing out at the glittering city, a new plan already forming in his mind. Amid the glowing signs. Yes, that could work. That could absolutely work. He turned back to her, a direct, unwavering gaze. We do this your way, Sophia. No more shadows. We expose him, legally, and you, archivist, will be the one to do it. The spark between them ignited into a steady flame, a shared determination against a common enemy. The conflict that had defined their forced union had given way to a dangerous, undeniable partnership. Sophia felt a fierce surge of adrenaline, a profound sense of purpose. She wasn't just a pawn anymore. She was an active participant, finally fighting on her own terms, using her own unique strengths to bring truth to light. Sophia watched Vincent, the Las Vegas skyline glittering mockingly behind. He had said, "We do this your way." But the weight of those words, the true implications, hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just about exposing Lombardi anymore. It was about Vincent choosing a different path, one that exposed him to risks far greater than hiding behind a sham marriage. "My way," Sophia echoed, her voice quiet. "My way means you don't use me as a shield. It means you don't hide behind this impulsive marriage. It means you stand up, accountable for your own actions, and expose Lombardi for the fraud he is, using the truth, not another lie." Vincent turned from the window, his dark eyes locking onto hers. The usual guardedness was still there, a lifetime of shadows etched into his expression. But beneath it, Sophia saw a flicker of genuine introspection. He was considering it, truly considering the difficult exposed path she was advocating. It meant giving up control, at least in the way he was accustomed to. It meant inviting scrutiny not just on Lombardi, but on himself, on his own past, on the very nature of his empire. "My world doesn't operate on truth in the way yours does, Archivist," he said, his voice a low rumble. "There are always angles, leverage. To expose Lombardi this way, publicly, with undeniable evidence, will not only discredit him but will also shine a very bright, very unwelcome light on my own operations, on my family, on how I allowed myself to be blindsided by a rival to the point of that chapel." His gaze softened, just barely, as he looked at her. Sophia felt a tremor, a complex mix of fear and something akin to admiration. He was acknowledging his mistake, acknowledging the vulnerability it created. "Then face it," she urged, stepping closer, her voice firm. "If your code truly means never use a woman as a shield, then prove it. Don't just say it. This isn't about protecting your assets anymore, Vincent. This is about your integrity. It's about not letting Lombardi's lies win, and it's about not letting your impulsiveness compromise another person's life." He walked towards her slowly, his presence powerful, almost overwhelming. He stopped just inches away, his scent of expensive cologne and something subtly dangerous filling her senses. She held her breath, waiting. This was his moment of truth, his ultimate test. Would the monster choose brute force, or would the code of honor she'd sensed within him prevail? His hand reached out, not to touch her, but to rest lightly on the edge of the table, where the ledgers still lay open, the faint residue of erased ink, a silent testament to Lombardi's deceit. "My code," he murmured, his voice rough. "It was built to navigate a world that doesn't care for ethics. But you've shown me that there's power in a different kind of truth, a truth that can't be bought or erased." He lifted his gaze to hers, and in that moment Sophia saw it. A profound shift. The hard edges of the casino investor softened, revealing the strategist, yes, but also a man making a difficult, honorable choice. "I will not hide behind our technical marriage, Sophia, and I will not allow Lombardi to use you, or the lie of spousal access, to bring down my family. Not when we have the real weapon." He gestured to the ledgers. "Your weapon." A wave of relief, so potent it almost buckled her knees, washed over Sophia. He had chosen. He was choosing integrity over brute force, accountability over evasion. It was a risky choice, one that would expose them both, but it was her choice too, the path she had fought for. "We expose him," Vincent continued, his voice regaining its usual steel, now tempered with a new resolve. "We do it publicly, with regulators present, and we do it with your evidence, your expertise. I'll arrange everything. The state regulators, the security, the after-hours access to the Neon Museum. It will be a spectacle designed to expose a lie, not create one." Sophia nodded, her mind already racing with the logistics. "We'll need the best UV light possible, and a clear, concise way to present the before and after, the erased versus the fraudulent. I'll prepare a brief, visual demonstration, something undeniable." He gave her a slow, appreciative smile, a rare, genuine curve of his lips that sent a jolt through her. "Undeniable. Good. This will be a surgical strike, Archivist. Clean, precise, just like you." He stepped back, a new energy radiating from him, a sense of controlled power now directed towards their shared goal. The risks are still high, Sophia. Lombardi won't take this lying down. But we will be prepared. You will be safe. His words were a promise, not a threat, and Sophia believed him. The tension between them had not vanished, but it had transformed. It was no longer the friction of opposing wills, but the electric hum of two formidable individuals united against a common enemy. The annulment, the real courtship, those could wait. Right now, there was a truth to uncover, a monster to expose, and a code of honor to uphold, and Sophia, the archivist allergic to chaos, was ready to step into the neon-lit spotlight, armed with nothing but the truth hidden in old paper. Sophia's hands were steady, despite the frantic beat of her heart. The high-roller suite had been transformed into a temporary lab. She meticulously laid out Lombardi's ledgers on a large, cleared table, her acid-free gloves back on, a small UV flashlight at the ready. This was it, the moment of truth, hidden in the fibers of paper and the residue of invisible ink. She had spent the last hours preparing, organizing each page that showed signs of alteration, marking them discreetly with tiny, removable tabs. Each tab was a silent accusation, a point of undeniable evidence. Vincent was a whirlwind of controlled intensity. He moved through the suite, a phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and decisive. He spoke in rapid Italian, then clipped English, orchestrating an intricate ballet of logistics. State regulators, security teams, after-hours access to the Neon Museum. He was pulling strings Sophia hadn't even known existed, weaving a complex web of precise arrangements. He was dangerous, yes, but undeniably effective. And for the first time, she felt that power working with her, not against her. She looked up, catching his eye across the room. He ended a call, his gaze meeting hers, a silent, knowing acknowledgement. The enormity of what they were about to do pressed down on her, a sudden, suffocating weight. This wasn't just a professional endeavor, it was a public confrontation with a ruthless man, a gamble with her own reputation and perhaps her safety. A tremor ran through her. What if she missed something? What if the UV light wasn't enough? What if Lombardi had another trick? Vincent, sensing her hesitation, walked towards her. He didn't speak, didn't try to offer empty assurances. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, glinting under the suite's soft light. It was the vintage slot token she had bought, the one she'd carefully placed in an acid-free envelope in her bag. He held it out to her, the brass worn smooth with time, a small piece of tangible history in the midst of their digital, dangerous present. Luck, he said, his voice low, his dark eyes intense, and accountability. Tonight, we have both on our side. Sophia took the token, her fingers closing around the cool metal. It was a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes, he remembered. He saw her, not just as a means to an end, but as a person whose small, precious acquisitions mattered. His actions, quiet and deliberate, reassured her far more than any spoken promise. He wasn't just protecting her, he was acknowledging her, standing with her. The tremor in her hands stilled. "I've briefed the regulators," Vincent continued, his voice firm, drawing her back to the task at hand. "They understand the gravity. They will be looking for undeniable proof. Your proof." He paused, then added, "My muscle will be there, discreet. They're not for show, Sophia, they're for protection, yours." She nodded, accepting the reality of his world, knowing that tonight a measure of his chaos was necessary to bring order back to hers. She glanced at the ledgers, then back at the vintage slot token in her hand. It felt heavy, a symbol of the chance encounter that had flung her into this maelstrom, but also a reminder of the meticulous truth she was about to reveal. "We leave in 10 minutes, Vincent said, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "Are you ready, archivist?" Sophia took a deep breath, the scent of expensive hotel and faint adrenaline filling her lungs. She slipped the slot token into her blazer pocket, a small, solid weight against her heart. She looked at the meticulously organized ledgers, at the small UV light that would expose the lies. "I'm ready," she said, her voice clear, resolute. Her precise, ethical world was about to collide with his dangerous one, and she would not be found wanting. Tonight, under the glowing signs of the past, she would bring the truth to light. The black SUV glided through the monsoon-slicked streets, carrying Sophia and Vincent into the heart of a different kind of Las Vegas. The strip's frantic neon receded, replaced by the hushed, almost reverent darkness of the city's forgotten corners. Sophia clutched the vintage slot token in her blazer pocket, its cool metal a small anchor in the rising tide of her apprehension. Beside her, Vincent sat silent, his profile sharp against the passing streetlights, a coiled spring of controlled power. His presence was a stark contrast to the quiet tension inside her, a dangerous calm before the storm. The Neon Museum loomed ahead, a skeletal wonderland of discarded dreams. Rusting giants of light, once vibrant symbols of gambling empires, now stood like silent sentinels, waiting for their final performance. The SUV pulled through a discreet, unmarked gate, the crunch of gravel under tires, the only sound in the vast, empty lot. The air was thick with the scent of damp desert earth and something metallic like old electricity. As they stepped out, the silence of the after-hours museum swallowed the city's distant hum. Vincent's muscle, three silent, imposing figures, emerged from a second vehicle, fanning out with an almost invisible efficiency. Sophia felt a familiar prickle of unease at their presence, their watchful, predatory eyes. She still resented the necessity of their shadows, but tonight she acknowledged their purpose. They were a perimeter, a shield against the chaos she was about to confront. Vincent led her towards the main entrance, a heavy door that groaned open to reveal an interior steeped in a history of light. But they didn't go inside. Instead, he gestured towards a pathway that snaked into the boneyard, the museum's outdoor collection where the grand, glowing signs lay scattered like fallen monuments. The moment Sophia stepped into the boneyard, her breath caught. It was a cathedral of light and shadow, a dramatic stage set for their confrontation. Enormous, iconic signs, the shimmering martini glass, the towering cowboy, the dazzling showgirl, stood resurrected, their neon tubes casting an eerie, otherworldly glow across the damp ground. Some pulsed with a soft internal hum, others flashed in slow, deliberate sequences, painting the scene in shifting hues of ruby red, electric blue, and emerald. A green. The air vibrated with their ancient energy, a silent symphony of forgotten glory. It was beautiful, terrifying, and profoundly dramatic. "They're here," Vincent's voice, a low murmur beside her, cut through the mesmerizing silence. Sophia turned. Two figures emerged from the deeper shadows, moving with an air of official gravitas, state regulators. One, a severe-looking woman with a no-nonsense briefcase. The other, a younger man, his face etched with a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. They nodded curtly to Vincent, their gazes flicking to Sophia, assessing, questioning. She held herself tall, meeting their scrutiny with a calm she didn't entirely feel. And then Lombardi arrived. Not a representative, but the man himself. He stepped from the darkness, flanked by his own two men, his tailored suit a stark silhouette against the glowing skeleton of an old casino sign. His eyes, cold and calculating, fixed first on Vincent, then on Sophia, a sneer of triumph twisting his lips. He clearly believed he had won, that this impromptu meeting was merely a formality before his legal trap snapped shut. DeSantis, Lombardi's voice cut through the air, laced with contempt. I see you brought your new bride and the esteemed regulators. Excellent. I trust you're prepared to finally present your records, as your wife is now legally compelled to ensure. He emphasized the word wife with a venomous relish, a direct jab at Sophia, at her forced connection to Vincent. Sophia felt a surge of cold fury. He was so confident, so utterly convinced of his victory, of her unwilling complicity. But his arrogance was a weakness, a blind spot. Vincent ignored Lombardi, his gaze locked on Sophia, a silent question in his eyes. She met it, a fierce, unwavering resolve hardening her expression. She took a deep breath, the scent of ozone and damp earth filling her lungs. This was it, her stage, her truth. The records are here, Mr. Lombardi, Sophia said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the tension. She gestured towards the heavy briefcase one of Vincent's men now carried, placing it carefully on a makeshift table set up amidst the glowing signs. The UV lamp, a powerful, industrial-grade device, sat beside it, its cold, dark bulb waiting. The air crackled with anticipation, the neon signs casting long, dancing shadows ready for the unmasking. Sophia's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, but her hands remained steady. She ignored. Lombardi's sneer ignored the looming shadows of Vincent's muscle, ignored the skeptical glances of the regulators. This was her moment, her battlefield, and the truth was her weapon. She moved to the makeshift table, Vincent's man carefully placing the heavy briefcase, now open, beside the industrial UV lamp. The air crackled, thick with unspoken challenges. Sophia reached inside, pulling out the first of Lombardi's ledgers. Its leather cover felt smooth, deceptively innocent. She laid it flat, beneath the powerful, dark bulb of the UV lamp. Mr. Lombardi, Sophia began, her voice clear, amplified by the hushed stillness of the boneyard, you claim these ledgers contain irregularities that implicate Mr. DeSantis. You believe my marital status, as you put it, should compel me to attest to their validity. She met his cold gaze, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. But I am an archival conservator. My profession is to preserve truth, and these documents, Mr. Lombardi, are a lie. Lombardi scoffed, a dismissive wave of his hand. Nonsense! They are meticulously kept records, authenticated by my own accountants. Sophia merely smiled, a cold, predatory curve of her lips that surprised even herself. Are they? Without another word, she flipped the switch on the UV lamp. A gasp rippled through the small gathering. The boneyard, already bathed in the surreal glow of vintage neon, suddenly took on a new, horrifying brilliance. The pages of Lombardi's ledger, bathed in the intense ultraviolet light, began to glow. Not the entire page, but specific entries, lines of numbers, dates and names, previously invisible to the naked eye, now pulsed with an eerie phosphorescent blue. The original erased entries, the ghost of Lombardi's true fraudulent transactions, shimmered into undeniable existence beneath the visible, forged text. Sophia pointed with a gloved finger, her voice steady, precise. As you can see, regulators, these are not legitimate entries. They are alterations. The original ink, chemically erased, leaves a residue that reacts to UV light. Lombardi didn't just forge new documents. He systematically altered his own books, then intended to frame Mr. DeSantis by making it appear as though these fraudulent accounts were discovered in his possession, with spousal access as the key. She turned page after page, each one a damning tableau of glowing blue lies against the pristine white paper. The regulators leaned in, their expressions shifting, from skepticism to shock, then to grim understanding. The severe woman with the briefcase pulled out a small, specialized camera, snapping photos of the undeniable evidence. Lombardi's face, initially a mask of sneering confidence, slowly drained of color. His jaw clenched, his eyes wide with disbelief, then with a furious, dawning horror. His carefully constructed trap, his insidious plan, was unraveling right before his eyes, exposed not by brute force, but by the quiet, meticulous truth of paper. "This is preposterous," Lombardi finally roared, his composure cracking. "A trick! A set-up!" He lunged forward, but Vincent's muscle, silent and swift, moved to block him, their imposing figures a stark barrier. Vincent, who had stood silently beside Sophia throughout her presentation, now stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the scene. He met Lombardi's enraged eyes, then turned to the regulators, his voice ringing with a new, quiet authority that commanded attention. "The evidence is clear," Vincent said, his voice devoid of emotion but laced with an iron will. "Lombardi's intent was to use fabricated documents and a coerced marriage to destabilize my operations. My impulsive actions in that chapel were regrettable. An error in judgment, born of desperation to counter a rival's unethical tactics." Then he did something that made Sophia's breath catch. He looked at his 3 silent bodyguards. "You're dismissed," he stated, his voice absolute. "Your services are no longer required tonight, or for this kind of situation ever again." The men, without a word, turned and melted back into the shadows, their presence dissolving as quickly as it had appeared. It was a public dismissal of his old ways, a stark declaration of his shift from brute force to legal integrity. Vincent then turned fully to Sophia, his gaze intense, piercing, yet holding a vulnerability she had never seen before. "And to you, Sophia," he said, his voice dropping, carrying only to her and the stunned regulators, "I offer my sincerest apologies. My actions were reckless. They compromised your integrity, violated your privacy, and put you in harm's way. You were never a shield archivist. You are far more formidable than that. You are the truth." Sophia stared, a wave of profound shock washing over her. His public apology, the dismissal of his muscle, his raw acknowledgement of her worth beyond his own desperate needs. It was more than she had dared to hope for. It was a complete capitulation, a profound act of accountability that resonated deep within her. The regulators, their faces grim but satisfied, moved to secure the glowing ledgers, their pens already scrawling notes. Lombardi, defeated and exposed, stood frozen, his eyes burning with impotent rage. His plot had not only failed, but had spectacularly backfired, thanks to the very woman he believed could be used as a pawn. Sophia felt a surge of triumph, a powerful validation of her quiet, ethical world. The confrontation had ended. The monster had been unmasked, not by shadows, but by the undeniable radiant light of truth. And in the heart of the boneyard, amid the glowing signs of a forgotten past, a new, unexpected future had just begun to flicker into existence. The boneyard buzzed with a different kind of energy now. Lombardi, his face a mask of impotent fury, was being escorted away by grim-faced security, his protests drowned out by the quiet efficiency of the state regulators. They were meticulously bagging the glowing ledgers, their expressions confirming the undeniable truth Sophia had laid bare. The threat of the subpoena, the spectre of spousal access, all of it dissolved like mist under the powerful UV light. The conflict was resolved, the monster unmasked. Sophia stood amidst the resurrected neon, the vintage slot token a warm weight in her blazer pocket. A profound sense of relief washed over her, so potent it almost buckled her knees. She had done it. She, the archivist, allergic to chaos, had faced down a Mafia boss and his rival, armed with nothing but paper and truth. Her integrity remained intact, not despite the chaos, but because she had navigated it on her own terms. Vincent approached her, his presence a quiet force in the receding tension. His dark eyes held a depth she hadn't seen before, a mixture of respect and something more vulnerable. "It's over," he murmured, his voice low. Sophia met his gaze, a weary but defiant strength in her own. "Not entirely," she corrected, her voice firm. "The legal process for the annulment begins now, first thing in the morning." She saw the flicker in his eyes, a brief acknowledgement of what that meant. It was a reclaiming of her name, her identity, a final severing of the impulsive, unwanted bond. She would not let this spectacle define her. Back in the hushed opulence of the high-roller suite, the silence felt different. It was no longer oppressive, but a space for reflection. Sophia shed her blazer, the weight of the evening still clinging to her, and collapsed onto a plush sofa. Vincent poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, offering one to her. She took it, the warmth in her hands a small comfort. "You were extraordinary tonight, Sophia," Vincent said, his voice quiet, devoid of his usual commanding tone. He stood before her, not towering but equal, his gaze steady. "I misjudged you. I saw a solution, an escape. I saw a shield." His jaw tightened, the self-reproach clear in his eyes. "I violated my own code, and yours." Sophia looked into her glass, the liquid swirling. "You did," she agreed, not unkindly, "but you also chose to make it right. You chose the harder path, Vincent. You faced the truth instead of hiding from it. That means something." He nodded slowly, a profound understanding passing between them. "It was your strength that showed me the way, your unwavering belief in integrity. You pushed me, archivist. You challenged everything I thought I knew about leverage, about power. You showed me that accountability, even in my world, is its own kind of weapon." His words, honest and direct, struck a chord deep within her. He wasn't just apologizing for the stunt, he was acknowledging her, truly seeing her for the formidable woman she was. The chaotic, dangerous journey had forged an undeniable connection, born not of impulse, but of mutual respect and shared purpose. Her initial fury had faded, replaced by a complex understanding of the man before her. He was still a part of a dangerous world, but he had a code, and he had, in the end, chosen to uphold it. "The annulment will be swift," Sophia confirmed, her voice softer now. "My name, my career, they remain untouched by this. That was always paramount." She needed that clean break, that ethical boundary. Vincent nodded, accepting her terms without argument. "Of course. It's what you deserve." He paused, then took a step closer, his gaze intense. "But the connection we forged tonight, that's not something that can be annulled, not for me." Sophia felt a tremor, a subtle flutter in her chest. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just the powerful casino investor, but the man who had, against all odds, chosen to stand with her in the light. The experience had changed her. She was still Sophia Turner, the precise archivist, but now she carried the imprint of neon lights and monsoon rains, of dangerous truths and unexpected courage. The annulment would dissolve their legal tie, but the quiet acknowledgement in his eyes, the undeniable spark that now existed between them, hinted at a different kind of connection, one that had only just begun to unfold. Months later, the frantic neon glow of Las Vegas felt like a distant dream, a wild, improbable tale told by someone else. Sophia Turner sat in her sunlit office, the quiet hum of the climate-controlled archives a soothing balm to her soul. The smell of old paper and new beginnings filled the air. Her student debt, once a suffocating weight, was gone, quietly settled by a discreet, anonymous transfer that she knew with a certainty that thrummed in her bones had come from Vincent. The annulment had gone through swiftly, cleanly, erasing the legal tie as if it had never existed. Her name, her career, her meticulously preserved integrity, all were intact. She was Sophia Turner, archival conservator, precise and ethical, just as she had always intended. But she wasn't entirely the same. The chaos had left its mark, not as a scar, but as a subtle, strengthening current beneath her calm exterior. She no longer flinched at the unexpected. She assessed. She no longer avoided confrontation. She approached it with a quiet, informed resolve. Her latest project, a grant-funded initiative to digitize and preserve the architectural plans of historic Las Vegas casinos, was her passion. It was meticulous work, requiring acid-free gloves and an unwavering eye for detail. The irony was not lost on her. The idea funding, a substantial sum, had come from a newly established DeSantis Preservation Foundation, its mission statement echoing her own dedication to safeguarding history. It was his silent apology, his public acknowledgement of her world, connecting his wealth to her ethics in a way that felt both unexpected and profoundly meaningful. He hadn't just paid her off. He had invested in what she valued most. The cafe was small, tucked away from the Strip, smelling of roasted coffee and old books. No velvet, no lilies, no desperate vows, just the gentle clatter of ceramic and the murmur of quiet conversation. Sophia watched him approach, a faint flutter in her chest, a familiar dance of conflicting emotions. Vincent DeSantis, still impeccably dressed, still radiating that quiet, dangerous power, but now softened around the edges, tempered by a grudging humility. He pulled out the chair opposite her, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Archivist," he greeted, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. It was his private name for her, a recognition of her unique strength. "Vincent," she replied, a genuine smile touching her own lips. He placed a small, elegantly wrapped package on the table. "For the preservation project. A few more pieces for the collection." Sophia opened it carefully. Inside, nestled on a bed of tissue, were several rare vintage slot tokens, glinting with the promise of forgotten stories. One, a particularly exquisite Art Deco design, made her breath catch. He remembered her small, accidental acquisitions, her quiet passion for tangible history. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, genuine. "They're beautiful. They'll be meticulously catalogued." "I'm sure they will," he murmured, a warmth in his gaze that sent a shiver down her spine. "So, the foundation, is it acceptable?" Sophia looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw the vulnerability beneath the carefully constructed facade. He was seeking her approval, not just as a professional, but as the woman who had dared to challenge him. "It's more than acceptable, Vincent. It's an act of accountability, a genuine one." He nodded slowly, a profound relief washing over his face. "Good, because I believe in paying my debts, and I believe in investing in what's real." Their coffee arrived, steaming gently. This was their courtship, slow, deliberate, built on earned trust and mutual respect. Coffee, not chapels, conversations about paper trails and power plays, about ethics and ambition. No impulsive vows, no dangerous games. Just two people from wildly different worlds, finding a quiet, undeniable connection in the unexpected aftermath of chaos. Sophia picked up her cup, the warmth seeping into her hands. The path ahead was still uncertain, still fraught with the complexities of his world and the steadfastness of hers. But as she looked at him, a sense of quiet promise settled deep within her. The archivist, who once catalogued the past, was now carefully, deliberately building a future one coffee cup at a time. If you enjoyed the video, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel to keep up with our content.